Breaking news out of the White House, President Trump has announced that military assistance to Ukraine is going to resume, but it's going to look a lot different than the Biden administration. Just what does this mean for Ukraine, and why is NATO also going to benefit? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about this breaking story. Okay, so the overall story is that, again, this was just announced literally at a press conference that's still going on between President Trump and the Secretary General of NATO at the White House, that the U.S. is going to be sending military munitions, arms, and weapons to Ukraine, but it is not going to be through the use of aid directly. Instead, it's going to be purchased by NATO from the United States and then routed to Ukraine. And this is a distinction that Trump, the businessman, actually views as being really, really important. That it not be that the U.S. somehow gets some sort of monetary benefit from the deal. But it also makes sense for NATO, because by NATO countries making these purchases and then donating the weapons to Ukraine, they likely will be able to count those expenditures against their NATO spending targets for military assistance, right? All NATO countries have ramped up their military spending in response to Russian aggression in the region. And so for a lot of those countries, they want to see that spending target hit in ways that are effective and effectively counter Russian aggression. And this is, well, probably the best way to do it, to literally spend money, buy weapons, and send them to destroy the Russian military. So it seems like everybody should be coming out on top here. But one of the problems is that it's become increasingly difficult to believe that the White House has a consistent policy on this matter, because this is done through a personal influence with President Trump, who has said not only is this new sort of lend-lease or buying weapons purchase program getting rolled out now, Trump has also said he's going to be sending Patriots to Ukraine, but he didn't even specify if it's missiles or missile systems. Nobody's really certain. But the problem with this sort of personal diplomacy or personal policymaking is that it can be reversed. Look at all of the Trump tariffs and annexing Greenland and all sorts of Trump policies. It gets sort of flip-flopped back and forth willy-nilly. And so just because it is happening today doesn't mean that it's not going to get reversed tomorrow. And that's something, again, the impetus for this was President Trump realizing, unfortunately, what we in the community that follows this conflict have known for basically years, that Vladimir Putin doesn't have a real interest in peace. He believes he is winning. He believes he can sustain this fight for much longer than Ukraine can, and that he is going to, he has no interest in a negotiated peace settlement. So this is, of course, despite numerous concessions from the Ukrainians, sincere efforts by the Ukrainians to attend peace conferences and agree to ceasefires and truces. The only person who's, of course, backed away from this repeatedly has been Vladimir Putin. And even President Trump finally concluded the same thing that we have seen, that Putin has made so obvious. He said, quote, "We will send them, the Ukrainians, Patriots, which they desperately need, because Putin surprised a lot of people." He surprised no one, by the way. He talks nice and then bombs everybody in the evening. Yes, this is, as we've talked about, Vladimir Putin as a Soviet-trained former KGB officer. He operates with a very different sort of perspective of public statements. Right? Because he isn't beholden to elections, he doesn't need to honestly communicate with his public. And he views most of this public statements, public diplomacy, as being performances, and that the true intentions are signaled by actions. So Vladimir Putin says things like, "I want peace," just like he says things like, he maintains that that the Ukrainian government is like genociding Russian speakers, which is insane. Because again, if you've been to Ukraine, the whole country is Russian speakers. Okay, almost everyone is bilingual. Obviously, you also have other sort of insane Russian conspiracy theories that Ukraine was operating a network of biolabs that were like creating dangerous pathogens. worth noting, of course, that Russia in all the annexed regions in 3 years has never found one of these biolabs. But this is just sort of just nonsense talking points, right? There's also, the Russian allegation that the Ukrainian government, a electoral democracy headed by a Jewish president, is actually neo-Nazis. He just says stuff, right? This is just empty talk that's meant to sort of confuse the public, confuse the Russian public about what's really going on, make it harder for them to cut through the BS and get to the truth. And basically everyone else has known this, right? Everyone in the defense establishment, everyone that follows this news closely, everyone that sort of just mentally keeps account of Vladimir Putin's actions. So the fact that President Trump personally could only be persuaded of this after months and months of dealing with Vladimir Putin is, again, sort of embarrassing, right? But exactly what you would expect from someone who is also staging the world's absolute worst cover-up in his efforts to pretend the Epstein files don't exist. But if they do exist, they were definitely written by Obama, who, of course, hasn't been president in like 15 years. So this is all just, he finally made it to the finish line, guys. He finally got caught up with the rest of us. The question is, will Vladimir Putin just call him tomorrow and be like, guys, we just had a miscommunication. I promise we're going to settle this. And so we'll see. We'll see what happens. But there is some reasons to be optimistic. And before we talk about that, I want to mention two things. The first is that you notice that I am really increasingly covering controversial issues. YouTube does not like it. Their algorithm I can see it spiking some of my videos, but that's okay. I'll continue to speak truth to power because you guys have my back over on combatvetnews.com. This is like my version of Patreon, where every Tuesday and Thursday, I drop uncensored combat videos that YouTube would never in a million years let me put on their platform, including combat videos. I just got a 4-minute long drone video that I haven't even reviewed yet, but it was sent to me by one of my contacts in Ukraine who's a drone pilot. So this is something that is not publicly available. And we have tons of videos like that in the archive. Plus, of course, you get the shout outs and you get the knowledge that instead of me depending on major media outlets or corporate sponsors who don't want me to say no words like Epstein, you guys have my back and enable me and the team to do this every single day. Plus, by the way, yeah, Ukraine's going to be getting some major munitions, but that doesn't mean they have all their needs met. And boy, we are still months away from that aid actually arriving at the front. And Russia is still rolling out massive fiber optic drones that are really just an incredibly difficult threat for these units to counter. And we are raising funds to help the 59th, the Liut Brigade, and other key units in the Eastern Front defend against Russian fiber optic drones. We're getting them their own long-range reconnaissance drones to track these Russian drone teams. We're getting them collimators so that they can turn their shotguns into counter-drone weapons. We're getting them quad bikes to improve their mobility so that they can stay undercover and keep moving. And of course, lots and lots of netting. And so if you want to help these guys out, you can join the hundreds of people around the world. Shout out to all these guys. You can see just some of the people who have publicly posted. By the way, if you donate, you can do so anonymously. But you can check out Russell Taylor. Screw those orcs. God bless them. Shane dropping $10.90 from an Aussie disabled pensioner. Every little bit counts. This is the kind of stuff, man. You see stuff like this and you realize that for all the political games around Ukraine, the average person sees another democratic country, sees another free people resisting a dictator's aggression and shows up for them, right? Anon dropping 260. Good luck and keep defending Ukraine, Europe, and US from Putin's madness. So shout out to all you guys. The link to this is in the description, just like the link to Combat News is in the description. So here's one of the things that reportedly set Trump off is that Vladimir Putin just really realized that he had strung along Trump as long as he could and told Trump point blank, I'm going to be taking all of Ukraine. Over the next 2 months, he said, I'm going to be ramping up my offensive in the East. We're going to take as much territory as we possibly can, which is, of course, the opposite of what you want to do if you're trying to sincerely move towards peace. And that, Trump essentially, Putin may have felt that Trump was broken. That Trump said, listen, I'm not going to introduce any consequences on to Vladimir Putin, which is kind of insane. Which has been an insane policy up until this point, given that the only country that Trump has really punished for the continued war has been Ukraine, which of course benefits Vladimir Putin because, well, the longer Vladimir Putin stalled the peace process, the weaker Ukraine became. And so finally, Trump has concluded, hey, actually, I can use force against some of these other, against the other side of the conflict, the person who actually started the war. So again, I'm pleased that he's come to the conclusion, but boy, the rest of us just have known this entire time. And to see the fact that so much of the president, remember, Steve Witkoff, who met with Vladimir Putin numerous times, would come back from those meetings and say, Vladimir Putin's so interested in peace. He's so sincere. It's just a miscommunication. We're so close to a peace deal. And so now we can sit there and say conclusively that, again, I was completely right. Steve Witkoff was completely wrong. He has no idea what he's doing and never ever actually assess the situation accurately, which is, of course, something that almost any analyst in any Russia desk at the CIA or DIA or State Department could have told him in like a minute. But you can see here, Senior Senator Lindsey Graham, again, who the worst person on earth, it happens to be doing something that I agree with, which is saying that U.S. weapon shipments to Ukraine are going to resume. Graham, of course, is one of Trump's staunchest supporters, but as all of Trump's supporters tend to be, they tend to have different views, right? Lindsey Graham says, oh, yeah, we should support our allies, but only if Mr. Trump says it's okay. Mr. Trump, can we please support our allies? Right? Truly one of America's greatest leaders. So again, a great outcome, a positive outcome. Would have been nice to have done so before, we had 6 months of Ukrainian soldiers getting killed, but that's okay. As Winston Churchill said, the Americans can always be counted on to do the right thing only after all other options have been exhausted. And that seems to be where we're at. So thank you guys. Hit that subscribe button and I will keep you posted for more videos next time. Cheers. Oh, and thanks to, of course, all our Colonel tier members, folks like James J21, Yanko, George F, Chris Gorsuch, Paul Templeton, Cytronic, Steve Moran, TR Need, Alan Nuts, and CM Holmes, and all of our Lieutenant tier members. New video with all that uncensored combat video is dropping tomorrow, so do not wait. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.